I remind our growers every year there will be acres taken out of production. There are acres that probably should have never been planted. But how are we going to do that? And if the farmers and the growers and the landowners are on the front end of that, we can make this work.
Coming up, we're talking to two ag entrepreneurs, Chase Hurley and Keith Yamamoto, about building an ag tech business and bootstrapping a new app in the water space.
Tim, when we saw our friend Keith drop HydroScore, I was super pumped because I love seeing people within agriculture, especially like ag lifers, build cool stuff in ag. We've been obviously working on our side project Ag List, and it's cool to see Keith Keith join forces with Chase, who's just an incredibly experienced entrepreneur in the water space in California, come together to build out this ag platform, HydroScore. It was really inspiring, and we knew we had to get him on the pod.
Yeah, it's like kindred spirits of people in ag that are like building stuff and have side hustles. Like anytime someone tells us about their side hustle, we're like, yes, you get it. We're in. Let's chat.
Can never have too many side hustles. Although we're
maxed out for the moment.
Maxed out for the moment. So we're going to jump right into this episode. Again, Chase's background is in water resources and land management and brokering deals in the water space in California, which he gets into. Keith is the president of Central Irrigation, an irrigation company in California. So we get into all of that, but really building out HydroScore, this platform to give various stakeholders in agriculture insights into water. So a lot of fun stuff. You guys are going to enjoy this one. Let's jump in. But first, a word from our sponsors. Hey guys, quick message from our sponsor, PF Partners. Growing your business in the agriculture space in 2025 is maybe harder than it's ever been. Investor funding has dried up, growers have tighter budgets than ever, and overall, it's just hard to go to market. PF Partners, a consulting firm with over a decade of experience scaling successful ad tech solutions globally, has just launched a new webinar on optimizing go-to-market strategies in the agribusiness space. It shows you what's changing in the market, exactly how to deal with it. Everything is backed by research, and it's about go-to-market plays in the ag sector that you can use tomorrow. So if you're ready to turn your go-to-market efforts into results, go to themodernacre.com/PFP or text modern to 55444 to download the webinar for free. That's themodernacre.com/PFP or text modern to 55444.
Yeah, I think California water is always evolving, and whether you're a Northern California water user, Central California, or down in the southern part of the state, it's very, very active, whether it's surface water supplies, Sigma related to groundwater issues, water quality. There's just a lot going on, and my goal and my vision of what I've tried to do over my 35 years in water resources is how do I convey that down to the landowner and the water user so they can make interactive and really tough decisions with the information that I can put in front of them. So I just think there's a lot out there, and my firm, I'm only a few years old. I think we've done a good job of finding that niche, and that's all what it's about: educating the landowners and the water users so they can make good decisions.
Chase is a water focused guy, so obviously, water is always in the forefront. I'm a farmer at heart and raised a farmer, so the main thing is the transition of what's happening, and it's not a transition this year, but I'd say maybe over the last decade in my professional career, just how farming and agriculture has changed overall, generationally, crop wise, the whole water component. I mean, it's always been, water's always been a big issue, but it's definitely one of the priorities now, much more than in the past, because everything changes so much now as compared to what it was in the past. And, just the way that like a multi-generational farmer like myself or business person, what that transition looks like on the other end and what steps need to be taken in order to continue on and stay in business. And, we're farmers. We like to make money too. So how do we stay in business and stay profitable and adapt with the changing markets and the changing the changing challenges that we have, with the markets, the water situation, land values, every finance, everything that plays in, and everything's in a transition period. So I would say, yeah, that's definitely what I'm thinking about every day on, what do we have to do today in order to still be here in the future. And I got 2 young kids, and, how can we keep this thing flourishing for their generation? So it's definitely something I think about all the time.
Love that. And, talking water is like in my DNA. So, yeah, quick story time. When I was dating my wife in college, the first time that my parents met her, I was senior in college at Cal Poly, and we went to breakfast. And, halfway through everything's going great. Parents meeting her. And, somewhere during the conversation, my dad just starts talking water to my girlfriend at the time about surface water and groundwater and irrigation. And I'm like, sitting over here just like sweating of like, Dad, please, can we just like cool the water talk on, the first meet? Like maybe this would be like a post-marriage conversation. So water is in my blood. My dad loves talking water, California water. So let's maybe go there. Chase, you're an expert on this space. We'd love to just hear your background and kind of what got you involved in this area, and maybe talk us through some of the market dynamics leading up to now. Loaded question.
Yeah, so I was born and raised on a small family farm in Los Banos. So 400 acres of row crops. That happened to be land that was within San Luis Water District. It's a federal Central Valley Project contractor. At that time growing up, I just knew that we got the water out of the Delta Mendota Canal and not much more than that. Went to Cal Poly with the vision of coming back home on the ranch and helping my parents grow it from 400 acres to something much, much bigger. My parents decided to sell the ranch when I was in college. So sort of had to reverse course a little bit. And I love production ag. I stayed in production ag coming out of college. Everything else being equal, it's sort of weird how things happen. I would probably still be, I started raising chickens for Zaki Farms and absolutely loved it. And I thought that there was going to be a career path there to stay with them. They had a huge change internally, and I got lopped off on a massive employee reduction. I just happened to be a numbers guy. And so I had to look and decide what I want to do from there. So still stayed in ag production. And I got a phone call one day from a local water district outside of Los Banos saying, hey, we'd like to hire you to come do finance and policy work for us. So it was a big transition from a kid that was raised on a farm and still in production ag to take a desk job. And I thought, I'll take it and see where it takes me. But that was in the early 1990s, and I've been in water resources ever since. So had a really good run with that initial job of knowing the Central Valley Project and Bureau of Reclamation inside and out, dam all the way down the Mendota Pool. Also got my feet wet in state water project contractor issues too. And that led to becoming a general manager for San Luis Canal Company, which is the San Joaquin River water right holder. Probably has some of the best water rights in the state. So got to learn a lot more about water rights, the tie into Millerton and the Friant Kern Canal. So I got to know all those issues all the way down into Kern County. So I did that for 13 or 14 years. And my bread and butter, I think, is my connection to the farmer. I knew my mom and dad as farmers. I know how farmers act. I know sort of what drives them. And as my role in GM for 13 years, that was my strength, not necessarily Sacramento politics, but how do I relay everything back to the farmer, and how do I do things that work for the farmer and they don't mind knocking on my door and come talking to me. So I had a great run as San Luis Canal Company manager. I could have been there till I retired, as long as they would have had me. But I got the itch. I wanted to be my own boss, and I wanted to get back into production ag. So I have a younger brother that was in production ag doing a variety of things. He still does a variety of things. And I just gave my notice one day and left. I didn't have anything set up. I knew that I was aggressive enough. I'd figure it out on my own about what I was going to do in the ag production sector. Um, but I wasn't gone 3 or 4 days, and my phone started ringing about guys looking for help with water right issues, transfer issues, conveyance, and it sort of went from there. I was doing some of those things on my own, and I got a call from Keith one day about, hey, would you like to hook up and maybe start a company that can do a little bit of everything from surface water to groundwater rights. Sigma was obviously formulated. It was starting to get a little more inactive in our everyday lives. So Water and Land Solutions was formed in 2018. I have at that time, there was four of us as partners. Since then, it's just me and one other partner. Keith was one of those original ones. I still talk and deal with Keith a lot. And Keith and his family are in a water district that I know very, very well on the west side. And it just, my vision of Water and Land Solutions and where we can grow to is really sort of matured over time. But the tie to it all is, how do I relate to the water user at the end of the day? And I've got to be able to get what the water user needs and making sure and it's affordable so we can continue to farm. So I think our niche is twofold. One is compliance with Sigma and how we can help them from a water budgeting perspective, et cetera. But really what drives our business right now, and it wasn't the plan because I got out of it, is we manage probably 10 to 12 private mutual water companies and water districts. They're all entities that are too small to have a full-time manager, but need help on a lot of variety of things. And so we do that. And that drives probably 70% of our business is managing water districts to help their portfolio with water rights, help them build infrastructure. And it started in Merced County, and now there's 12,000 acres we're managing up in Chico. We've got a couple large clients down in Tulare County, and a large vision of what we're doing here in Merced and Madera County. And it includes everything from managing the districts, focusing on water rights, to helping get folks annexed into districts. And we've probably got $15 to $20 million worth of infrastructure projects that we're managing as being able to get folks hooked into the system. We did a really good job in California in the 50s and 60s of building infrastructure and getting things done, but we didn't do a really good job of interconnecting of all that main infrastructure that got built at the time, whether it's off the federal system or state system. So there's a lot of work to be done for smaller conveyance projects, and Water and Land Solutions is right in the middle of a lot of that.
Wow, I have hundreds of questions. It's going to be hard to navigate this conversation. You got my mind racing, but yeah, maybe let's get into some of just kind of the specific projects and tactics that you're working on. You mentioned kind of conveyance, transfers. I know, like I hear talked about in Australia that they have a much more sophisticated water market for kind of buying, selling, trading water rights. Maybe just kind of give us the update in California on like how that marketplace is currently working.
Yeah, California has their own unique water rights. So the ability to sort of tweak and change the water rights, that's going to be tough to and I don't think any of us are looking to do that. In fact, a lot of us are looking to protect the water right protection we have and the water rights in California. It's mostly based on time, and but that being said, there is a lot of maneuverability to be able to transfer water, and transferring of water in the state of California is still a beneficial use. So as long as we maintain transfers as beneficial use, we should be able to make hay in terms of helping landowners being productive, whether you're on the transferor side or the transferee. So one example is, and a lot of this has to do with Sigma, it has its origins in Sigma. So if you're a white area landowner within Sigma that historically has had no ability to use surface water other than some flood water, WLS has been able to come in, for instance, in the Red Top area, outside of Chowchilla. We have been one of helping Triangle T Water District go from a non-district to getting their LAFCO approval. And we are now roughly 15,000 acres. Prior to 2017, that area had not had any surface water imported into its area other than some local floodwater. And now we average 7,000 to 9,000 acre feet of surface water into that area, with the main focus of curbing the subsidence so they can continue to work with their neighbors and meet the objectives of sustainability from a subsidence perspective within the Chowchilla subbasin. But to bring that water in, I told the landowners, you work with me and you finance roughly $20 million worth of infrastructure, and I can bring you water in from all parts of the state. And that's exactly what's happened. So we are connected in now into the Mendota Pool, and I can get water into the Mendota Pool from almost anywhere in the state. And that's one project that's been very well defined about how we've been able to help. It's 8 landowners now and roughly 15,000 acre feet, and they're 10 steps ahead of a lot of their neighbors just because not only do they have access to the surface water, but they've been able to go out on the open market and compete for that water.
And how are these projects being funded? You kind of alluded to it. Is it a group of growers coming together saying this is a need we have, and if we pool resources, this could be the outcome?
Yeah, so that was on the Red Top and the Triangle T Water District. It was 3 landowners that privately financed a large siphon underneath the San Joaquin River and a 40 cubic feet per second pipeline system. So it was privately financed to around the tune of that one project to $2 million. But to give you another idea is we just recently got annexed approval for 10,000 acres into Orland Artois Water District. They're also a Central Valley Project contractor, but they're in Northern California off the Tehama-Colusa Canal System. That 10,000 acres got annexed in. There's a $12 million construction project that we are leading. Around 75% of that project will be grant funded through the Bureau of Reclamation, so non-reimbursable money, and the balance of it will be by those landowners within those 10,000 acres. And right now we are helping them going out to the private institutional market, finding the best rates we can to get that project fine-tuned so we can have all construction complete by the end of 2027.
Keith, I want to bring it over to you, learn a little bit more about your story, your journey, and kind of how your paths cross with Chase and what you guys are working on together.
Yeah, sure. Like I said earlier, I'm a 3rd generation farmer. So growing up, you were talking about your dad talking about water. I drive around with him in the truck, and growing up, we farmed in 4 or 5 different water districts, state water, federal water, river diverter. So, and when it was usually always tied to the piece of land, because we're farmers, we're always looking at the next piece of land. So early on, I kind of understood, right? Just because you're in a certain town, certain area, doesn't mean that the water is the same, right? You could cross the street and you're in a bad water situation, or on the other side of the street, you're fat with water. So I always knew that underlying concept growing up, but you know how it is when you're a kid. You hear it, but you don't really understand the gravity of it all. When I co-founded Central Irrigation, my father kind of pushed me that route because on the farm, it's the on-farm water is what we can control day to day. So he pushed me that route to get into, drip irrigation and, pumps and pipelines, all those things that we do all the time to make the water work once it's on the farm. And then, I think it was 2017-ish. It's Chase's current partner now, Brad Samuelson. We were working together on a project where it was a Sigma-driven project, and it was a lot of infrastructure. I mean, not similar to what Chase is talking about. It was a large infrastructure project to bring surface water to areas that never had surface water prior. And we worked a lot together in that initial project. And then, we started communicating with Chase, and he brought a whole different perspective on the state, the CVP and state water facilities. And so the way it seemed to work to us is like, okay, they just as much need, infrastructure minded conversation as they do policy minded, because, you can go get the water, but to Chase's point about the Triangle T Water District, until you have the infrastructure in place or you have a way to actually convey the water there, you can do all the policy work that you want. So it really made a lot of sense to us to work together. And, Central Irrigation, we've always tried to differentiate ourselves and offer something that the farmer really needs. And, starting 7-8 years ago, the farmer really needed guidance on Sigma specifically, and just water in general, water deliveries, water conveyance in general. So it just made a lot of sense for us to work, with Water and Land Solutions to offer a better product where we can work side by side and find the solutions that fit the ranch to make it, water sustainable. And so we had a lot of great success in doing that together, and still do. And we feel, just to Chase's point, is that's the real value to the grower, because growers know how to farm. They're the best in the world. It's some of these policy-driven, nuanced things that change, and are ever changing, is something that it's a hard time for even professionals such as Chase to keep up with. So if we can, we decided that working together, we can help them stay more informed and make good decisions to plan for the future, because you can't build these things overnight. Like Chase's point, he has a project they're trying to get done by the end of 27. So they're planning for decades in the future, and it takes years, even once you get approval of things, to actually get things built. So it made a lot of sense, and we've been able to do a lot of good projects to help the landowner or the grower by putting our heads together.
Super cool. Love that you both come from farm families. Keith went the route of irrigation, co-founded Central Irrigation. Chase, you've gone the water management consulting path and cross paths. Maybe let's talk about this new venture that you're working on together, HydroScore. Maybe talk to us about kind of the origin story there.
Yeah. So when I was working closely with Chase's company, Brad, the one thing that there just wasn't enough of them, right? Enough of their time. They're in high demand. They had literally no time because, Chase is very humble, but it's a very fragmented and complicated situation, especially if you look at the whole state as one unit, which it's not. It's very fragmented, and water rights, like, it changed as you cross the street. So when you don't have enough time and you have fragmented data, really the only option you have to go to is hire a bunch of people like Chase, which they're just not out there, right? There are really good professionals out there, but they're in limited supply. So the next route was, okay, how can we do 70 or 80% of this with technology? And so a lot of what they were doing, and I don't know what Chase's day-to-day is now, but they were doing a lot of water risk evaluations for banks and institutions for those gray area places in California that only the locals know, really, what the water rights mean, and what's available, and can you actually access the water you need to grow a certain type of crop, or just crops in general. So pretty much the whole thing is the HydroScore product was to streamline the data acquisition, the organization of the data that they were doing all longhand, to come up with a relative score or ranking for the water strength of a parcel or a group of parcels. And along the way, we've run into a lot of very interesting data points and data sets that allow us. You can't replace people like Chase or other professionals that have been in it with their experience. But we found a lot of data sets and interface it together, which allow, like I said, 70 to 80% of the objective information that you need to understand the water situation in a certain area. So then you are that far along. So when you get on the phone with someone like Chase, it makes more sense, and he can give you the subjection that you need, right? That you're not going to be able to put, an Excel sheet, or you're not going to find on a county website. So it's been a really fun project, and we've been working on it for a while. And yeah, it's basically, how do we create more Chases, right? How do we expand and clone him? And you can't do that. So it was a function of creating more time for him.
Chase, how do you do that? How, talk us through kind of how you guys have thought about this together, of how do you, 80-20 it, right? How do we get 80% of, Chase's mind, in the hands of the people that need it, the growers, the land professionals? Like, how did you guys think about actually, doing this and getting this information consolidated?
Yeah, and Keith gave a really good background on how we got here with HydroScore, but the idea came to us, to Brad and I, because we had one client that was a bank, and the bank would call us and they would pay us to do a water supply evaluation on specific parcels.